Good morning, my friends. Welcome to our New Testament challenge. Today I'll be sharing with you some thoughts on the 14th chapter of the Gospel of Luke. And so it's a rather short chapter comparatively. One, two, three, four, five little vignettes here. The first one, he's talking once again, he is healing on the Sabbath. We've heard him say Jesus, the Son of Man, is even Lord of the Sabbath. And the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The Sabbath is necessary and needed. We need that time alone. We need that time to rest. We need that time to focus in on God. But, don't allow the rules to overcome the needs. And this man had needed to be healed. He'd been waiting for so long, and Jesus, healed him, and he told the Pharisees and the scribes, and he says, listen, if you had a child or an ox that had fallen into a well, would you not immediately pull it out on the Sabbath day? And they didn't answer because they had nothing to say, and so he healed the man, and they were upset about that. Then he said, again, he's gone past preaching. He's gone to meddling now. This is kind of where he's at as he gets closer to the end of his ministry. His lessons become more and more, not really controversial, but difficult. Confrontational. What am I trying to say? His lessons are more difficult. They are more serious. He's dealing with real life. He's dealing with some other issues. They're things that a lot of people do, and he says here, talking about humility and hospitality. He says, if you go to a wedding party, he says, don't immediately go to the front of the table. There may be someone who comes who's more important than you, and you get asked to move to the back. He says, rather, sit at the back so that the host will come and says, no, you need to come on down. He says, just kind of think, humility, in other words, be humble. Don't put yourself out there, or you will be embarrassed, or you could possibly be embarrassed, but be humble. And he says, for all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exhausted. The whole who shall be first. The last shall be first, the first shall be last. He's hitting this again. And then he said, when you give a luncheon or dinner, don't invite your friends or brothers or relatives or rich neighbors, because they'll invite you back, but invite people who can never repay you. Do be gracious to those who cannot repay you, and then you will receive your reward at the resurrection of the righteous. Our treasure in heaven, as we've heard it said. Then he tells a parable. All right, let me read this. One of the dinner guests, let me say this, on hearing this, said to him, blessed is anyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God. And Jesus said, yeah, okay. He said, let me give you a dinner. Let me tell you a story. He said, this man gave a dinner, and he invited all these wonderful guests. And every one of them, he sent a slave or a servant to tell them that they'd been invited. And some say, well, no, I've got this excuse, I've got this reason or another reason, and I can't come. And so the owner of the house became angry and said to his slave, go out once in the street and lanes of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. Sir, what you've done has been done, and there's still room. And he said, go out into the rooms and compel people to come in so that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those who were invited will taste my dinner. In other words, you get a chance, you get an offer, and there's going to be a point in time. And like I said, Jesus, at first, he said, I come to the children of Israel. But then after they've had their opportunity, he's going to open wide the doors. And thank God he has, because that's where we are invited in. And so he's going to open that. He's going to go out into the highways and byways, and anybody and everybody, every child of God is welcome to come to the great dinner. And there will be a point in time when it is full and no one else can come. They've had their chance. Then he talks about the cost of discipleship. And this is interesting. He says, now large crowds were traveling with him. And he turned and said to them, so he'd been coming and people had been coming up and more. He'd become more and more popular. And now he's talking about, okay, kind of the image I have. Do you remember in the movie Forrest Gump when Forrest was running? I just felt like running. And he went back and forth. And there at the end, you could see him running, and he had 100 or more people behind him, just following along behind him. And then he stops and he makes his, he talks and he says, I'm tired now. Jesus turns to the crowd that's following him. They had this image of who he is and what he's like. And now he says, all right, whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost? Make sure when you decide to follow me, you estimate the cost. You know what it's going to take. Because there might be a possibility it could cost a lot, it could cost a little. But you need to make sure you understand the cost of being a disciple. Not simply follow me because it's it's interesting, because everybody else is following. There's that whole thing. And I believe for a long time, from the 50s through the 70s in America, people often went to church because that's what you did, particularly in the South. You went there, if you were going to be a politician, you had to be in church. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was just part of what you did. I think we're getting past that, where people don't have to, they don't want to, and so now, really, one good thing, you don't have to build. The buildings don't have to be as big, but two, the people who do come are the ones that really want to be there, and so you don't have to cater as much to the folks who are cultural Christians. Who are only there, because somebody drug them in, and they really don't care about what you have to say. It's just something to think about. And then finally, he talks about, salt. He says, salt is good, but if it has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. They throw it away. You've got to retain your saltiness, got to retain your flavor, because if you lose it, you're no good. Your faith is no good if you lose that. If you become a cultural Christian, if you become a, CEO, Christmas, Easter only type of thing, then your witness has lost its flavor, has lost its impact. Something to think about, my friends. Take care, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.